Night shifts at Alcazar Memorial Hospital always carried an unnerving stillness that crept through the fluorescent-lit corridors. The hum of machines and the occasional distant cry of a patient punctuated the weary silence, but I often found comfort in the solitude. As a nurse working the graveyard shift for over a decade, I had grown used to the routine ghost stories and spooky rumors passed around about our forsaken floors. Stories about the hospital never seemed to die, much like the building itself. It was an ancient structure, steeped in history, and as legend had it, tragedy. Most of us had heard about the sealed-off seventh floor, said to have been gutted by a devastating fire back in the 1970s. Records varied, but locals spoke of a blaze so fierce that it left the floor uninhabitable, charred all black and scarred by soot, a tomb of sorts for whatever spirits might linger there. As a skeptic, I dismissed these tales as idle chatter to make our routine lives more gripping. I was more concerned with the living patients under my care, despite whatever macabre tourism lurked around the hospital's history. It was also said that, after the fire, the floor was sealed off entirely. No repairs, no renovations. The elevator now bypassed it altogether, the button marked with a broken line. But the oddities began subtly enough. A maintenance man, Carl, mentioned casually one night over coffee that the elevator would receive strange calls to the seventh floor, a floor it couldn't reach. At first, I thought it was a messed-up wiring issue or a technical glitch. However, the way Carl's eyes shifted as he spoke made me pause, as if he knew something more but felt it wasn't his to share. I shrugged it off until I saw it for myself. The light, the barely used remnants of the fire seventh floor button, illuminating bright amongst the rows of functional floors. My stomach fluttered with discomfort the first time it occurred, but the elevator did nothing more. It dinged, the doors stayed firmly shut, molded to bypass the haunted floor like a secret tongue that doesn't wish to wag. I let it fade into the background like the hum of the hospital at night. But the calls persisted and grew more frequent. I began noting every occurrence during my shifts. None of the day shift staff seemed to notice. They were too distracted or too dismissive of things that veered toward the supernatural. Little things like mechanical writing on poorly cleaned windows or a voice on the wind meant nothing to them. Our night crew, saturated in history and darkness, knew better. The dawning of winter's bleak end brought with it something different. The hospital air conditioning played havoc, so there was always a difference between biting chill and stifling heat within those hollow hallways. But there was a time, just around the witching hour, where an inexplicable cold sweep would find its way to our station, uncomfortable and out of place. Almost as if the vacant rooms were filled suddenly with 100 specters, all drawing from the very warmth of existence. One fog-encrusted night, after what had already been a long shift of vending machine dinners and halted whispers among the few of us awake, something changed. The moment hit like lightning, crackling and impossible to ignore. I found myself alone by the elevator, checking vitals on my tablet when it announced itself with a harrowing ding. My eyes slowly swept upward, dread coiling tight within me. There it was, the seventh floor light, blinking persistently, a beacon ablaze in the endless dark. I turned my back to it, determined not to indulge in its calling when an unholy rhythm echoed from within. Knocks, a strange syncopation bleeding through steel like it were wood, an impossible knock resided, 3 distinct taps, patient and waiting, as if somberly knocking upon the gateway for the dead. As I turned back uneasily, the doors, shrouded in shadows deeper than the night's own teeth, slid open to reveal emptiness that felt too densely populated with absence. The elevator door stared emptily into me, and I moved to close it, hesitating before trying to convince myself to step right away, when something colder than breath itself washed across the threshold. Something unseen whispered between the blinks of the light overhead, urging deeper than sunken tunnels below. Every logical piece of me screamed to turn back. My hand hovered over the button, and with a trembling resolve, I pressed close. But before I knew it, my breath held against gravity, My legs moved stealthily of their own accord. Compelled and reluctant, I entered that spectral chamber, an unwilling participant in what felt like an actor's play. My finger jabbed the first floor, quietly beguiling any imagined world beyond that door to leave me be. The panels shivered closed with a sound almost of reluctance, as if allowing passage against a voracious will. The descent was halted all too swiftly, again ringing familiar hell's herald, and as they parted, the inclination was clear, pallid decay and dust echoes spiraling through whispered wails of sheer emptiness, welcoming me to the entity forgotten. To the upper forbidden floor, shelves of loneliness cast quiet wonders. An unthinkable voice urged to press on, yet each whisper from the browned, singed walls was wild and alive against fear, against nay, against escape. Theory spoke of whales and wretched souls trapped, and when confronted with them, presented reality against legend. In that haunted burial ground where footsteps played with shadows against blackened bulbs, it felt alive, like the building breathed, haunted in 1,000 whispered verses. I was trespassing beyond boundaries marked by something furious, something unwilling to forgive. The grip of the unknown tightened, thickening around my chest, constricting logic away. Within the soot and bricks that felt like the fragments of memories long forgotten, the walls eulogized to each timid step, collapsing breath and sound beyond the resonant heart of presence. I retrieved my phone, its flashlight cutting furiously against living dark, illuminating path through a floor, seemingly broken tethered to past and ashes. As flickering shadows cast wild flourishes against chaotic sketches, I realized despairingly that this floor was not empty. Tables and gurneys, stacked like forgotten belongings, loomed into the passage, and there hung disembodied bits and bobs, hanging entirely wrong, as if creatures decimated mid-existence then captured spirit anew. Shadows strode silent specters upon those unmarred patches, and barely discernible, caught light fractal whispers. A blood-stained drape, singed and charred, markings belonging only into nightmares formed alone. Deeper into the breach, through layers thickening anew with ancient wrath, faltering beneath weight of history, the knots within began shifting, the shivering whispers lending voices to ghosts lost. Then came the fracture, the opening of gates unguarded, fated fervently against rightful passage, now bridled forcible in its lose. My shadow twined amongst those long departed, the silence itself, a pulsing proposition caught upon secrets unfurled within stilled claiming. Rationality has its tenure lost. Amongst that dim idea of Alcazar's haunted birth, I finally faced, upon tragic emergence past unwritten silence against imperceptible depth, one of the many restless denizens making unknown their shape against eyes unseeing, urging further onto realms they dwell. Against shadows and there, emerging in void against flight, dismayed vision, captivated upon embers lost, reeling sensation as something unseen seared anguish into broken echoes, when they finally met mine. Certainly blind to simple gaze, thereupon scourged mirror light behind dead eye, dismissing entire claims of rebuke, acceptance awarded against willing minds bent. Inchoate terror slaughtered against mere pretense of life, resurrect a being known no solace, straining reaching abyss carved against thin reality itself torn. In place where breath hangs silent on soulful eaves beyond presence's wane, dread of boundless histories curled amongst living murmurs, and thus reality wove gates clanged close, shaping stranger pathways beyond presence lost. I became ever more capture of discord undrawn. The doors closed, securing the lamented lines from recent disclosures recurred. Against measure more unseen than most senses could secure, I was descended to portal persistence mundane, but anew transformed completely swept. Time held hands, lined, chained against passage where death bore strange entitlements, grazed against the footfall's trace held against chains upon floor grounded, in unheard hymns played by deeper frames, thus never deigned again. Quietude, a soothing night, passed whilst a stray stayed lives upon return anew, empty still everything there within building of Alcazar tormented in quieted breath. A night unknown persists, and forever its boundaries drew beneath the same call which eternally endured.